So last week I got a chance to play some Dragon Age Inquisition. EA had a little event here in the city, and so it was me and some other press members. We went in and it was basically just unfettered time with the game, starting at the beginning and leading to as far as we got in the 3.5 or 4 hours that we spent with it. I can't talk about everything due to spoilers, but I can certainly give you some impressions of what I am allowed to talk about, and that starts with the character creation, because I was pretty impressed with the character creation, unexpectedly so. There are a lot of ways of establishing a character. You get 4 races to choose from: human, elf, Kunari, and dwarf. This is the first time the Kunari has been playable, but I ended up going with an elf, and I'm really happy that I did, because I got a chance to really play around with the character customization options, and they're much more in-depth than I ever expected them to be. So to give you an example, I mean, you're used to being able to set eye color and, you know, even in certain games, like the spacing of the eyes and the eyebrows and all that kind of stuff, like how long the nose is, how big the jaw is, and it's got all that kind of stuff, but it goes even further than that. It's to the point where you don't get to choose just eye color, but you can choose the inner cornea color versus the outer cornea color, to make eyes look even more like real life eyes. And there are tons of like tattoo options and makeup options and all sorts of stuff like that. And so what I ended up doing is I created this elf that I was trying to make look very lovely. And as I went on, I actually used some of the makeup options and tattoo options, and I gave him like really cool eyes with some white eyeliner and things like that. The downside is that by the time I got into the actual game, a character that looked good in the character creation screen ended up sticking out a little bit in the main game. My poor elf looked a little too colorful around his compatriots, but that was okay. Another thing that I really liked about it is that you get several different voice options, even for the same gender. So if you choose a male character, you have 2 different male voices, and if you choose a female character, you have 2 different female voices.
I just hope I can help.
Everything you've heard, completely true.
So the rest of the stuff that I can talk about is the gameplay in the Hinterlands, which is this, it really is a grassy, foresty area. I was playing on the PS4, but I did get a chance to play around a little bit with the tactical camera. Which is not only back, but isn't just for PC players, but also for console players. And I didn't spend tons of time with it, but one thing that I really liked is the forward button. So in other words, in the past, like if you're playing Icewind Dale or Baldur's Gate, or Dragon Age even, and you go into the tactical camera, you know, when you play those games, you pause, issue your things, unpause until the time comes to pause again, and then you pause. And in this case, instead of pausing and unpausing, you have a forward button that you just hold down to progress time forward and let go when you need to let it go. And it's effectively the same thing, but it's a much smoother kind of experience as a result of that, and I really like that they've embraced that idea. The rest of the time, though, I kind of did it from a third-person, more action RPG kind of perspective. And actually, that ended up being a lot more satisfying than I expected to be. I played as a mage. You know, you have your main basic attack, which you perform just by holding a shoulder button, and then you hit various buttons to pull off the other spells, and it felt really good. There's a nice lock-on that you can use to lock on to enemies, at which point the camera sort of zooms in a little bit so you get a better view of what's going on. Otherwise, there's still auto-targeting when you perform your spells, but it'll go to whatever enemy the game thinks is the appropriate one, whereas you can also choose enemies by locking onto them, and it felt right. It felt very good. The Hinterlands is also a big place. You know, I did it with a full party. You get your own character that you yourself create. You get Varric, who returns from Dragon Age 2. As far as I know, he's the only returning character that can also be a party member, so that's fun. Or I should say the only returning party member that can now be a party member. But Cassandra also joins you in these early hours, and if you don't remember who Cassandra is, she's the Inquisitor that's interrogating Varric at the very beginning of Dragon Age 2. So you get Cassandra with you, and then you get another mage. In the end, the exploration felt really good. Moving around the Hinterlands was really easy, and quests are really easy to take. So you've got your story quests, and the game leads you really well from place to place with story quests. But as you go out into the world, and this is not like corridors going through. I mean, it is somewhat like that, but I think you can think of it set up sort of like Kingdoms of Amalur was, where it's not an entirely open world, but they're large open spaces that are connected either by corridors or by loading screens. There's not only quests that you come across, either by coming across people that have stuff to offer you, or by wandering into, say, a shack, and there's a diary there, and then that can initiate a quest for you as well. I was playing on regular difficulty. There wasn't, at first I really didn't run into any trouble, and for the most part I didn't. I could play as sort of a third-person action game with my people at my side, only occasionally pausing and asking them to do things like use potions and whatnot. One time I did stumble upon a dragon, quite accidentally, and I initiated battle. That involved not just the large dragon flying overhead and bombarding us, but also little wyverns on the ground. And I had my ass handed to me pretty easily. It would have been a good place to actually start to micromanage that battle, but I had limited time. So instead of trying to bash against that particular dragon, I chose to go off and do something else and come back later. What I played, it seems like they've got something that's a little bit there for everybody, depending on what you like from RPGs. I mean, it's easy to say, hey, this isn't as much like Dragon Age Origins as I would like, but it does sort of have that, and it gives you an opportunity to play that way if you want to. And I really like that about it. But also, if you go into something feeling like you want a little bit more of an action RPG, it feels really good to play from just a typical third-person perspective. You also get to level up your skills and your spells, and I didn't investigate that tree too much. I did level up my characters as I went, but the good news is, of course, that you've still got Varric using Bianca, his bow. And you will get to upgrade that in certain ways. But the trees looked a lot like they did in Dragon Age 2, where in some cases you get a chance to either, when you spend a skill point, you can spend it on something new, or you can spend it perhaps on an enhancement of the one that you already have. One interesting thing about health potions is that you start with 8 total potions across the party that you can use, and whenever you go back to camp, you replenish that. They're not really inventory items, as it were. I sort of think of it more as the way Dark Souls handles its Estus flasks, which is like, this is the potions that you get, and you get to refill the health anytime you go back to a base camp. So at this stage, it's clear too, when you're making decisions in dialogue, I haven't done anything that's too wild and crazy just yet. No great decision when I was playing in the first 3 hours, but obviously ways to sort of build up my character before that. Do I want to be an asshole? Or do I want to be, nice about stuff? And of course, you get to go back and forth between those if you so desire. And the game does tell you how it affects your relationships with other characters when you do that. It's sort of Walking Dead style, in the sense that, hey, your relationship has been improved somewhat with this person, or so-and-so didn't like what you had to say. So it's a little bit more upfront than previous games were about how you're affecting your relationships with other people when you make those decisions. Even though I only had like 3.5 hours, 4 hours with the game or so, there's a lot more to talk about, and I could keep going on, but I think I'd probably get boring at that point. But suffice it to say, I'm actually really looking forward to getting my hands on the full game at this stage. I don't know exactly what to expect yet. I feel like BioWare is in a position where they made people a little bit unhappy with Dragon Age 2 not being in the same ballpark as Dragon Age 1 when it came to quality, and I feel like a lot of people got burnt out on that Mass Effect 3 ending. So the question is going to be, is this the return to what people want from BioWare? And something tells me that, there are always going to be naysayers. There will always be people that complain about stuff. But something tells me that this is a good step towards getting people, back on their side I think that what I played of Dragon Age Inquisition was really good, and hopefully, full game ends up being just as good as what I hope it will be.